I'm certain that when we debate those bills, it might have been one of the bills that will be tabled later today, or it might be something that will be coming in the future, that question will be specifically answered. But I will undertake to get that specific answer to the opposition leader.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. And I do appreciate the fact that the Premier is giving us updates, because I must admit I had been really concerned, and I'm sure other people did, about all of what we were doing in advance of the assessment.
Okay, you can put your question.
So my question is this. Recognizing that it says expressly prohibits the use of agents by money service businesses, do we have money service businesses right now using agents, and what would be any sort of transition period?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I cannot speak to the specifics on that particular matter, whether or not money service businesses are using agents or not. I think that from the perspective of we have money service businesses, there could be a risk if there were agents that were used that were not licensed or that were not underneath the particular auspices and following the AML and ATF rules. So if this is a preventative step to address money laundering. But I think what we've noticed, Mr. Speaker, is there's been a lot of regulations and compliance that were put into place. So, for example, before, real estate agents never had to register. Now real estate agents have to register. There are a lot of different things that are necessary, but if Bermuda is to retain its top-tier jurisdiction status, we have to make sure that we are leading the pack, and I am confident that the work which has been done by the teams who have worked extra long hours, and I didn't say it in my statement, but I should thank all the members of NAMLAC for their incredibly hard work, and I would hope that everyone else will recognize the hard work in which they're engaging in as well.
Thank you, Premier. Would you like to do a supplementary or new question?
No, supplementary.
Continue.
If the Premier, if he doesn't have the answer, then I wouldn't mind him getting it. All I wanted to understand was, are there money service businesses using agents now? And if so, is there some sort of transition to say to them, you have to stop, as opposed to just expecting that it's going to be a business change immediately?
Premier?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I can confirm to the honorable member is currently money service businesses on Bermuda do not have agents. However, the Financial Action Task Force guidelines is asking everyone to put into place regulations to make sure that does not happen in the future.
Thank you. A new question?
Yes, Mr.
Continue.
This relating to strengthen the framework of the oversight for the legal and accounting professions, etc. And I just wondered, because, as I say, the Premier is enlightening us all on what these regulations are going to do, could he just indicate what type of coordination and supervision was envisioned in terms of the requirement to strengthen the oversight with respect to the accountants and the legal profession?
Premier?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. To answer the honorable opposition leader's questions, those are recommendations that came from the Financial Action Task Force to make sure that we strengthen the perimeter and to make sure the perimeter of the law, of the legal profession, and to make sure that persons that may have had criminal backgrounds or otherwise were not getting involved in that.
Thank you. Supplementary or new question? You're fine? Okay. Premier, that's the end of the questions for your first statement. However, there are also members indicated they'd like to put questions to you on your second statement, and again, that's the leader of the opposition. And remember, would you like to put your questions regarding the initial coin offering regulations?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm reminded, as I say, in the Premier reminded us that the ICOs can only conduct business in Bermuda after having granted consent from the minister, who is the Minister of Finance. And so I had a couple questions with respect to the compliance measures outlined in the ICO regulations. The first one related to the need for a company to ensure that it applies appropriate measures relating to identification and verification of the participants in the ICO before it issues a digital asset. And I just want clarity as to how would this be verified, or by whom this would be verified?
Thank you. Premier?
Mr. Speaker, it would be verified by the people that are issuing the ICO, and the requirements would be that they secure the information of those persons. So in the fintech space, there are a number of accredited identity validation services which use documents which are the same things that are used in proceeds of crime. Example of valid passports, example of valid residence, utility bills, and all the rest, to specify so they can clarify who exactly the person is that is subscribing to that digital asset.
Thank you. Supplementary?
I have a new question.
New question?
Yes.
Well, you have a member might want a supplementary, I think. Supplementary from the Honorable Gordon Panther.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a supplementary on that, with the Premier indicating that passports would be valid to be able to verify the identity. I wonder if the Premier could advise in that regard whether the UK passport or the Bermuda passport would be equally deemed to be valid, given the challenges that we are having now in respect of how passports are being differentiated.
Premier?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what I would say is whether it's a Bermuda passport, a UK passport, a passport from the United States of America, Germany, France, or wherever, the fact is that there are the same steps which are taken by financial institutions to verify the information of who the person is dealing with, the same KYC regulations which apply in other financial industries which apply here, and whatever steps and measures, as we said, we're taking the compliance measures from the existing proceeds of crime regulations. Those measures will apply. So whether they Bermuda passports, UK passports, or any other country, those items will have to be verified, and the same measures which apply to other things such as banks, insurance companies, and otherwise will apply to companies inside of this space. Thank
you. No further supplementaries? No further questions on that? We now move on to the next statement. Oh, I'm sorry. Right. Put your next question, my fault.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Don't want to lose the opportunity.
No, I appreciate that. Mr. Speaker, through you to the Premier, there's reference to instances where companies must conduct enhanced due diligence on ICO participants, and I just wondered if the Premier could perhaps give us an indication of what would trigger the need for enhancement.
Premier?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. All these things were done on a basis of a risk management framework. So say, for example, if there was an application from a country for someone to purchase a digital asset or part of that, and they were a resident of a jurisdiction that was considered a high-risk jurisdiction, then they would be subject to enhanced due diligence. It's all based upon a risk framework. But as we said, we are not building something new here. We are taking what we use in other places in the financial services industry and transpose them onto here. So the same rules, the same regulations apply to law firms, that apply to trust companies, that apply to banks, will be the same things that apply to companies inside of this space.
Thank you, Premier. Supplementary?
Yes, I have a supplementary,
yes.
Mr. Speaker. Just if the Premier could clarify that with the AML-ATF regime, there are specific countries that are disqualified from operations with companies here in Bermuda. I want to just ensure that, notwithstanding the Premier has indicated that there'd be additional scrutiny, I just wanted to make sure that the excluded countries will continue to be excluded, irrespective of the representations that might be made by any company from that state.
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to try this one more time because I hear the questions and I appreciate the questions, but I want to remind, and I'm going back to the statement, Mr. Speaker, that, and it's the penultimate paragraph, and it says, Mr. Speaker, the Proceeds of Crime, Anti-Money Laundering, and Anti-Terrorist Financing Regulations 2008 were used as a blueprint when it came to compliance measures and adopting part of the Proceeds of Crime regulations that pertain to certain ICO-type activities. But I want honorable members to be aware that we are not creating something new and we are not creating something different. So, for example, there is a UN sanctions list, and that list, FATF has their own list, but the UN sanctions list, and then there is a list that is done by the competent authorities under NAMLAC, and if someone is coming from a country that is on the banned list, then they will not be able to participate in that. In the exact same way that it works with banking, in the exact same way that it works with trust companies, in the exact same way it works with legal services, in the exact same way it works with insurance, in the exact same way it works with corporate service providers, Mr. Speaker. The requirements will be the same, will be based upon risk, And as FATF says that this is a new technology and that's how FATF views this, then we have to make sure that we put in place an appropriate risk-based framework. We have a risk-based framework throughout our financial services industry, and we'll be transposing those same stringent requirements inside of here, Mr. Speaker, because as I said during my remarks, that our reputation is paramount.
Thank you, Premier. We have a supplementary. Supplementary from the Honorable Member Pearman.
Mr. Speaker, given as the Premier just indicated that these regulations are not really something new and different, but are already existing, could the Premier assist the House whether or not enhanced due diligence was also applied to Arbitrade?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I am happy to answer that question because Arbitrade has not gone through this particular issue because this particular issue has just started, Mr. Speaker, which is precisely the point of which was made by the Minister of National Security in the media this week. However, what I can tell the honorable member is that what I can tell the honorable member, as he works inside the legal profession, and he would know, that any company that comes into Bermuda must secure the permission of the Bermuda Monetary Authority and their sign-off, and I can ensure the honorable member that enhanced due diligence was done. However, the thing is, what we must discuss is how do we go forward. Under the ICO regulations, that is just step one of the process. If there are digital assets to be issued, if there are exchanges to be started, there is a higher level of compliance that has to happen, which may be higher than just a company incorporation. However, Mr. Speaker, I am confident that the people of the Bermuda Monetary Authority know how to do their job, and I'm confident that the people who are going to be the gatekeepers for this will make sure they continue to do their job to protect the reputation of Bermuda.
Thank you. Supplementary?
Yeah.
Supplementary, Ed?
Yes, I have a question. I just would like to know the length of time it took to carry out that enhanced due diligence, given the fact that it was just incorporated the 30th of May.
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, I cannot speak to that, what the BMA's processes, which they go through, but what I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, is that I can undertake to find out how long that process took with the BMA on that particular matter, Mr. Speaker.
New question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Continue on.
There's an indication here, and I appreciate the fact that the Premier is indicating that there are all sorts of different types of regulations out there, and depending on where the company fits in there, that it will be determined which one of those regulations they're going to have to sort of comply to. But I just want to understand that the need for a company to carry out an internal compliance review on its ICOs, and I just wondered whether there was anything specific that had been suggested with respect to the ICOs in terms of how often this review would take place and by whom.
Premier?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I can say is that it will be based on risk. The specific questions about the time and the amount of time that happens will be referred to in the regulation. I'm happy to make sure the member has a copy, although I know that it will be circulated to all persons. But I'm happy to pull that up for the honorable members to provide her a specific answer if she wishes.
Thank you. Any further questions? Supplementary? Take your supplementary.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get some clarity here. So of the ICOs, they actually, most of them right now are, if anything, they're the limited liability companies. Is that correct? Are they registered as limited liability companies so far, since you haven't actually...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I refer to the first line of the statement which I made, it says, and I'm sure the Honorable Opposition Whip was here when we debated it, it was the Companies and Limited Liability Initial Coin Offering Amendment Act, which made amendments to the Companies Act and also amendments to the Limited Liability Companies Act. And in order for anyone to issue a digital asset, they have to be either a Bermuda company or Bermuda Limited Liability Company under the laws of the Companies Act.
Thank you. So,
yes, so if they are all limited liability companies, wouldn't they fall under the registrar of companies versus the BMA as far as the enhanced due diligence and KYC is concerned?
Mr. Premier?
Mr. Speaker, it is, I know that she was getting the honorable opposition whip was getting her whispers from the honorable former premier, and it's shocking to know that a former premier doesn't understand how incorporation processes work in Bermuda. But let me, oh, don't worry, I can see you whisper very well. Let me just try to explain how the process works.
Members, I need to hear from the member when to speak.
I told everyone to be on my best behavior, so I'm doing the best I can, Mr. Speaker. But to actually think that we are being asked by a former premier of the country as to how an incorporated process works is quite surprising. But I shall.
Let's take the point of order.
The honorable member is misleading the House. The honorable member is receiving the question from our honorable whip, and I would like him to address it as such.
Yes. Mr. Premier, the point was made that the person who put the question was not the individual you made reference to. That may be a source of information, but that's not for us to determine. Your response should be to the person who asked the question.
I'm happy to answer the question.
Thank you.
So let me explain how the incorporation process works, Mr. Speaker. Companies apply to the Registrar of Companies. The Registrar of Companies must get sign-off by the Bermuda Monetary Authority on the requirements. The Registrar of Companies does a check, the Bermuda Monetary Authority also does a check. So it happens in two places.
Thank you. You hit your two. No further questions? No supplementary? We'll now move on to the next statement. Members? The next statement that was down for question is for the Minister of National Security in reference to his first statement. And the question is from the Honorable Member from Constituency 10. Honorable Member, would you like to put your question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, very straightforward first question. On the first page, the Honorable Minister refers to the strategic plan. Will the Honorable Minister table that strategic plan in the House?
Thank you. Minister?
I'll take a look under advisement, Mr. Speaker. I do not know what part of the strategic plan is indeed security sensitive. It is something that I'll have to look, and after we have the opportunity to discuss it with the Cabinet, then I will seek the Speaker's indulgence on the way forward.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Supplementary and new question. Honorable Minister, rather. New question, member?
Supplementary.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister, I appreciate him taking it under advisement. In relation to this statement, just want to reflect back to a previous statement. The Honorable Minister said he would give me some feedback on the situation with psychologists, and I'm still waiting for the information. Is the Minister available now to give information? How many psychologists